All right, everybody. All righty, y'all. Let's go ahead and get started. Good evening. It's great to have everybody here tonight. Really appreciate everybody being here. We are going to get started with some prayer requests and some announcements. Then we will follow that up with a word of prayer, followed by Brother Howard coming up and dismissing us to our classes and song. Got a few prayer requests tonight. Two prayer requests. One prayer of thanksgiving / announcement, and we'll use that to transition into the several announcements we have tonight. So Jim Roberts was moved to Millington Healthcare Room 8, so there's some movement there, some progress. We need to keep praying for Jim. He's going through a lot right now. Also, I got this note from Ronnie. This is not in your news sheet, but Walter Wiggins fell and was taken to St. Francis Bartlett with a possible broken hip. So we need to make sure we're praying for Walter. If you have never talked to Walter on the phone or visited with Walter, you are missing out. Walter is just a great brother in Christ, loves Christian fellowship. So make sure you're praying for Walter as he recovers from what we hope is not a broken hip. And then as prayer of thanksgiving, we got word today. Takes us a couple of days usually to get through all the collecting and money counting, and so putting everything where it needs to be. And I have to tell you that in addition to a bunch of clothes, shoes, and a variety of other items, since Sunday, we have managed to raise over $1,000 for our new children's clothes closet and ministry. So that's awesome. It blows me out of the water how Kelly was saying that they're just like coming in left and right, and she just kept finding more. She texted me earlier today and thought we found about $640, and I was blown out of the water by that. And she said, "I found more," and then it went up to over 1,000. So we are so very thankful for that. But it's not too late. You can still give. God's not going to dislike you for continuing to give more. So please, if you haven't given yet, or if you would like to donate more, not just money, your time, clothing items, whatever, just let us know. You can put any continued contribution for that. Just make sure you make a note of it. If it's cash, put it in an envelope. If it's a check, write it for children's ministry in the memo, and just place it in one of the boxes we have here on the wall, and it will get where it needs to go. We are continuing to offer our grief class. Last Sunday was the beginning of that grief class. I understand that it was well attended and very much appreciated. That is going to continue in the small auditorium in this Sunday for this Sunday and the next two following weeks. So please, if you need to avail yourself of not so much a Bible class, there is Bible in it, of course. But it is more of a support class to try and build up your ability to grieve and mourn spiritually, appropriately, and in a healthy way that will make difficult times that you might be going through all the easier. I talked to a few that were in that class on Sunday, and they were very appreciative of it, and I know you would be too if you are in need of it. We also have a soul winning class that's going to be beginning this Saturday on September 9th, starting at 10 a.m. That's going to be every Saturday in April. Howard's going to be April. Why did I say April? I'm on autopilot, and sometimes words come out. September It's not like it was written down for me or anything. But that's going to be every Saturday here in September, and Howard's going to be leading that discussion. And it's, I think, one of the biggest hurdles to sharing the gospel with somebody is building the confidence to just get the conversation started. And that's what this class is going to be on. So please avail yourself of that. It will be to your benefit. Yeah, and bring your Bible. Absolutely. Also, speaking of classes, our ladies' class resumes tonight in the small auditorium, so that all of you ladies don't have to sit in here and listen to me drone on anymore. No, I'm kidding. But we're gonna be holding that in our small auditorium immediately following our dismissal from this opening devotional tonight. It'll be right across the hall. Ladies, I know you all love that class, so it's back on tonight. We've also got some upcoming events. Of course, we've got the Spring River Family Camping Trip on October the 13th through the 15th. The Children's Home Food Truck will be here on October 16th, and if you want to make some donations for that, there is a list on the bulletin board where you can get that information. And then finally, this is something we've been holding off on announcing a little bit because we've been trying to get it together. We were trying to schedule the speaker and get some other details out of the way, but in October, we're going to be holding what we hope will be an annual youth rally called Dry Bones for all the teens, not just for our teens here, but for as many teens as we can get in the room from other congregations, youth groups. This year, our initial year, Brother Taft Ayers is going to be the speaker. He's going to have two wonderful keynote addresses, and we're going to have worship, we're going to have food, we're going to have games. It's going to be a lot of fun. There is a flyer for the event on the table in the foyer, right outside the back doors here. So if you want to go, it is $15 a kid. But as usual, if you don't have $15 and you want to go, let us know and we'll try to see what we can do. And if you want to donate any money to help out with kids so that they can go who are financially struggling to go, just again, same thing with the children's ministry. Just make a note of it as you donate. We'll make sure it goes to the right spot. And then for the clothes closet, the things we are looking for specifically are related to kids. We need children's socks, long sleeve shirts from boys 8 to 16. Actually, it says boys and girls here for that. And then long pants, jeans, leggings, joggers, sweatpants, sizes 8 to 16 for both boys and girls. And then this one's important. This is something we're really trying to pack up on so that we can give them out. Lightweight jackets and coats. So make sure if you have those items and you would like to donate them, or you're willing to go and get them and donate them, please do so. It would be deeply appreciated. Okay, I think that's about all I have. So let's go ahead and have a word of prayer, and then we will turn it over to Brother Howard. Mighty God, Holy Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the blessing we receive through your name. God, I ask that you bless us in all things. Help us to be yours and yours alone. And Lord, as we struggle to understand your will, give us wisdom, give us insight, and give us understanding. God, I ask that you bless our discussions tonight and the variety of classes that we have this evening. God, we ask that you are glorified in each one. Use each opportunity to bring each student, each attendee, each teacher closer in relationship to you. Make us more like you today than we are tomorrow than we are today. Bless us always. In Christ we pray. Amen.
And by faith we can see it afar, for the Father waits over the way to prepare us a dwelling place there in the sweet by and by. We shall meet on that beautiful shore in the sweet by and by. We shall meet on that beautiful
Alrighty, y'all. If everybody wants to open up to Revelation chapter 17, we're getting pretty close to the end here in Revelation. Tonight we're going to be taking, I promised you last week, once we finish the wrath chapters, Revelation 15 and 16, which can be, they're important chapters. You have to go through them in order to get the sense of what this book is about. They're not exactly builder-uppers because they're about God's wrath and God's judgment on the evils of man. Tonight, I promised you that it would be a little happier. Now, I want to make a little note to that. That doesn't mean it'll be happy. It just means it'll be happier than our last few discussions. Because tonight we're talking about the chapter heading I have above chapter 17, verse 1 in ESV is the great prostitute and the beast. You might have the word harlot here. This is a scathing bit of anti-Roman propaganda. Now, when we say propaganda, typically what we think of is something that is just, state-issued news, fake news is the words we use today. In this regard, we don't mean that. We mean that it is political speech that is directly targeted. I got to tell you something. So this is a balancing act that I, along with every other individual who has ever done this job since frankly the beginning of the church, has started or has had to deal with throughout the course of their career, their time in the pulpit. And that is, how do you balance political statements with biblical statements? How do you talk about the things that are current events and have political ramifications in a religious context, in a spiritual context? I got to tell you, I've only had a few people get theologically mad at me over something I said biblically over the years. It's not zero, but it's a relatively low number. Very, very few people have come up to me over the years and said, Jarrod, I think you're interpreting this verse wrong. It's happened, but that is a relatively low number. But I cannot tell you how many times someone has come up to me after a Sunday morning, a Sunday night, a Wednesday night, or just a Bible study and taken serious issues with the political ramifications of one of my sermons or Bible classes. That's happened a bunch. It dwarfs those other numbers. And the reason for that is because for some reason, especially in today's modern climate, we find political speech more offensive than almost any other kind of speech. And I tell you, I've even had people who were in the business tell me, fellow brothers in Christ who themselves are preachers, basically when we talk about this, when we do shop talk, and if that comes up, how political should I make my sermons, I've had several of them, even older, well-intentioned, more experienced ministers tell me that they do everything possible to keep politics out of the pulpit. I got to tell you, I do not agree. I do not agree. And the reason why I do not agree is because my job is to do my best attempt at trying to preach the way that Jesus preached, to trying to preach the way that Paul preaches, that John preaches, that Peter preaches, that Luke preaches, that all of the biblical authors preach. And I got to tell you, they are more than happy to go down a political lane if they are required to do so. Jesus was a political guy. He made very, very overt political statements. What else, and I've heard this one trot out a bunch, what else is Jesus doing when he says, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, but give to God what is God's? What is he answering a question on? Is he answering a theological question? He's asked the tax question. Now, he's asked a tax question in a religious context. What they're trying to do is they're trying to find what a lot of us try to do, a religious loophole to a political problem. Well, if there's some conflict between Moses' law and the Roman tax code, then we have the basis for not paying our Roman taxes. So they ask Jesus a very carefully worded, albeit deeply political question, and Jesus gives them a deeply well-worded political answer. Now, he does color it with religious speech and with a religious conclusion, but make no doubt that, that Jesus was not at all shy about giving a political answer to a political question, letting you know his political thoughts. Paul's no different. In fact, maybe even more so than Jesus. If you go back and you read the later chapters of Romans, they are chock full with political statements. When Paul says that the government is an agent of God and, quote, does not use the sword in vain, that is a political statement. That is a spiritual statement with political outcomes regarding capital punishment. He even talks about taxes himself. Now, Revelation, by nature, is probably the most political book of the Bible because it is a scathing diatribe on the nature and practices of the Roman government. Now, specifically related to their treatment of Christians, but since when is talking about how a government treats a certain class of people not a political conversation? You see, the truth is, folks, is that we have a struggle in our lives as modern Christians where we try to keep our political identity as separate from our spiritual identity as humanly possible. But I would argue there's no need to keep them separate because they are one and the same. Now, I don't know about you, but when I go into a voting booth, as I'm going to be doing here in the next year or so, when I go into a voting booth, I do not go in as a Democrat. Some of you want to say amen to that. But I got to tell you, I also don't go in as a Republican. I don't do that. Now, are there political parties that I agree with more than I agree with others? Yes. But I don't go in as a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, a socialist, a communist, fill in the blank-ist word at the end of that sentence. I don't go in there that way. I go in as one thing and one thing only, a Christian. I vote my faith. Why? Because every political conversation, if it has moral, ethical, or even potentially spiritual implications, is by definition a religious statement, even if it's wrapped up in a bow with the political wrapping, right? But we say, it's like, well, you can't talk about that. Let me give you an example. Years ago at another church, I was asked once a year, every year, as the preacher, by the elders, because they made an agreement with some of the members who were heavily invested in the program. They asked me once a year, every year, on Right to Life Sunday to preach a sermon on abortion on Sunday morning in front of the whole crowd. I was very happy to do that. I did it several years in a row. And one year, I have never heard. See, right now some of you may be tensing up a little bit to hear what I'm about to say. That's okay. But I can tell you, I have never heard Christians say more unchristian things than I did after those sermons. I had one lady come up to me. This lady had been a Christian longer than I had been alive. She came up to me, and she was in a huff. And she pulled me aside, and she said, "Jarrod, I just don't get why you keep insisting on talking about this issue when you're a man, and this is a woman's issue, and it's none of your business anyway." She got even more upset when I called her to repentance after she said that. I have, because they think it's like, well, my feelings on abortion are separate from my feelings on the Bible, or my feelings about God, or my feelings about my faith. They are not. Not because of the political practice. I'm not talking about whether or not it should be legalized. I'm not talking about whether or not how available it should be, what term it should be. All the questions that they got asked at the recent public and nominee debate regarding abortion. I'm not talking about those questions. I agree. There are questions regarding the policy, American policy on abortion, that have to take a political context and as such need to be answered that way. I'm talking about the outcomes of it. Because what are we talking about? Inherent to the question on abortion is a deeply biblical question, and it is this: what is the value of a single human life? Where does that life begin? And as such, how do we classify the action of ending said life? Now, I can't talk about that topic without people feeling political fervor on either side of the spectrum. I've even heard preachers get up and say this, that they get up behind the pulpit and they say, well, I'm talking about this, but I'm not trying to be political, I'm trying to be biblical. But the Bible is political. The Bible is deeply political because it has political implications. What else would you call a gospel that puts an entire religion of people against the powers that be within the Roman government? It's political. And it's not passively political. It's actively political. The reason I'm talking about this is because Revelation 17 is where the rubber really starts to hit the road when it comes to God's feeling on the politics of Rome. And as such, he doesn't pull any punches. Look here at chapter 17, starting in verse 1. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and said to me, "Come, and I will show you the judgment of the great," what? Prostitute. Now, that word is an attention grabber, isn't it? The moment you read that word or hear that word, let's say you're at a dinner party or like some kind of mixer or something like that, and you're talking over in the corner with your friend and you're just kind of discussing your day, and there are all a bunch of people around you having different conversations that you're not a part of, and then in a moment of silence between you and your friend, you hear another conversation over in the corner say, yeah, that's when the prostitute got involved. Do you ignore that? or does that just jab into your brain immediately? It's an attention-grabbing word because it's not something that we quote-unquote talk about in polite society, right? The action of selling one's body for money. It carries with it a variety of different implications and feelings and emotions. We see lust, we see greed, we see abuse, we see objectification, we see all the dirty things associated with it. It's not one of those things that anybody should talk about proudly, right? It's one of those kind of, metaphorical four-letter words, right? It's not a type of word, and it's not the type of talk that you expect even a biblical author to use, really. But not only does a biblical author use it, but it's throughout the Bible. This is the term prostitute, harlot. Sorry about this one, folks, but if you've read Hosea, he uses it a lot. Whore. I ask you, what does God tell Hosea? He says, I command you, even in the ESV, one of the newest modern translations relatively, he tells Hosea, I command you to go and take a wife of whoredom. You read that and go, oh, can you have a casual conversation about this topic? No. The moment it gets brought up, it's real now. There's weight to this conversation. Come and I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on the earth have become drunk. So what's the angel selling this quote-unquote great prostitute as? The source of all of the corruption in the world. Not only for itself, but for all of those who have, for sake of the metaphor, lain with her, lied with her. This is the person who is at the heart of the corruption which has caused God to enter such a period of great and terrible anger. We just read about the results of that anger in the previous 2 chapters, didn't we? Now we're going to get down to the heart of the matter. Who specifically is God angry at? The angel says it's this great prostitute. Verse 3, and he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names. And it had 7 heads and 10 horns. Again, here for the numbers, just so we're clear. 7 is the number of completeness. So this beast is complete in one aspect. And that it has 10 horns. 10 is the number of law or judgment. So this is a sign of power, and it is complete in that power. This is an apex predator. This is not a house cat. This is a Siberian tiger. This is not a thing you would want to mess with. Verse 4, the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet. These are both, of course, royal dyes, what we call royal dyes or royal colors. These are the scarlet and purples. These are the most expensive, most difficult dyes to manufacture and use. Therefore, they are typically associated with wealth and royalty. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. So the image that John wants you to have of this woman is that she is arrayed in these beautiful, fancy, expensive clothes and jewelry. She's drinking wine. She's relaxed in her debauchery. But he wants you to imagine a complete and total lack of a word we have a troubled relationship with, which is modesty. Modesty, if you ask a Mennonite or an Amish person what the word modesty means, they would draw special attention to the buttons on my shirt as being a lack of modesty. That's why the Amish typically use hooks and not buttons, because they think that for whatever reason, they think that the simpler clasp is more modest than the fancier, more modern clasp. Don't even get them started on zippers. Of course, our concept of the word modesty really changes over time, doesn't it? We've constantly been in a discussion biblically and socially as to what is modest and what is not. If you go back to the 1800s, a woman in fully clothed pants that completely cover both of her legs, even baggy pants, would be the height of immodesty. Because women, if they seek modesty, they should not wear pants. They should wear what? Skirts. Dresses, skirts. A friend of mine, a good friend of mine, a fellow preacher, actually once had a public debate with the preacher from another congregation in the area who was calling out his congregation because they didn't preach against women wearing pants. And they would wear pantsuits to church sometimes. And this preacher heard about it, and he had a couple sermons on it. So he agreed to a debate with this individual. It's probably the most succinct win in defense I've ever seen in a debate, because they got up on the stage. He let his opponent go first, the guy that was saying that women should only, that it's masculine and immodest for women to wear pants, go first. And he went on for about 20 minutes on this tirade about it, quoting all sorts of scripture and drawing special attention to what he wanted to talk about. And then when it was my friend's turn, he pulled out from behind his stand a plastic Kroger bag, and he pulled out of that Kroger bag one of his wife's pantsuits. And he said, "Brother so-and-so, I will surrender all of my time to you and declare you the victor of this debate if you will do one thing for me. Your next Sunday morning, I want you to wear this. I want you to preach in this pantsuit." And he said, "I can't do that." He said, "Why not, brother?" Guess what he said? "Because it's feminine." And then my friend just went and sat down. I don't think anybody in the room had any argument about who won that particular debate. We laugh at stories like that, but that is indicative of the conversation we keep having about modesty. My dad back in the 90s, if I was up here as his son, still living at home, teaching this Bible class in these jeans without a tie, that would have been a conversation when we got home. He still likes to bring it up every now and then. He goes, "Jarrod, you're such a good preacher. Someday I'll talk you into dressing like one." Of course, he's kidding. But to him, that's what is modest for a preacher. The word modest, really all it means is appropriate. That's really all it means. Paul will talk about women in Corinthians, he'll talk about women not adorning themselves unnecessarily, specifically for the purpose of drawing attention away from others to themselves, because that is inappropriate in a worship service, because we're there to give attention to God and not to an individual. He doesn't really say anything about the hemline or how plunging the neckline is or anything like that. He just talks about what is appropriate for a specific setting. If you're doing yard work, a t-shirt and jeans and tennis shoes is a perfectly appropriate uniform. But if you work at a bank, probably shouldn't wear that to work. If somebody asks to see if somebody wants to see the bank manager and they come into your office and you're wearing a sleeveless Def Leppard t-shirt, guess what that is? It's immodest. Why? Because it is inappropriate. So what is he saying about this woman and her modesty? He is saying that she is consumed with self. Consumed with self. And I don't know about y'all, but I have noticed this. When one is consumed with self, typically that internal spiritual struggle has outward physical manifestations. In fact, it doesn't even have to be clothes, does it? It could be the way a person walks, the tone of voice a person uses, the way that they look at those who they consider to be less than, and how they treat them. It can be how you behave in traffic, or at a gas pump, or in a McDonald's drive-through line. It is immodest. Why? Because it draws attention to self to an excessive degree. So that's what she's doing. She has no care. Where is she? Where does he say that she is? She's in the wilderness. Why is she wearing all of this accoutrement, if you want to call it that? Why is she wearing all of this jewelry and silk and dyed clothes and holding a goblet of wine? And I imagine her laughing Cruella de Vil style on the back of this animal, this beast, when she's out in the wilderness. What does she not have in the wilderness? An audience. And yet, even in private, you have to say this for her. If you're going to give her a compliment, it has to be this one. She's not a hypocrite. You know what the definition of being a hypocrite is, right? when you're somebody different in private than you are when you're in public. She is not a hypocrite. This is who she is. Her sinfulness is not a mask, it is inherent. Verse 5, and on her forehead was written the name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of the earth's abominations. And when I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of saints and the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. This is a woman who is blood drunk. She is a murderer. She is a defiler. And she is arrogant enough to prop herself up even on the back of this beast. That's how consumed with self that she is. Now, he names her. He names her Babylon. There's a very specific reason for that. Because she's not Babylon, she's Rome. So why call her Babylon then? Let's go ahead and field that one for a couple of minutes here. Why not just come, if she is Rome, why not just come out and say she's Rome? Why call her Babylon instead? What do you think? Yeah, because if the members of the 7 churches of Asia get copies of this letter, under what government do they live? Rome. And if your house is getting searched, and the legionnaire finds this, and it's in Greek, and he can read it, and he reads the word Rome, what's he immediately going to do? Arrest you and send you off for execution as an enemy of the state. So, what does John do instead? He gives Rome a stand-in, a pseudonym. He is that, and by the way, that is why Revelation is such a difficult book to interpret, because it's written in literal code. It has a cipher, and that cipher is Jewish, ancient Jewish apocalyptic literature that you need, even if you're a Christian, you need your Jewish Christian friends to help you interpret. That's how political Revelation is. Its message is so deeply politically, would be so deeply politically offensive to Romans that it would get you killed. So John writes it in such a way to where really only Christians and people who understand Jewish apocalyptic literature can interpret. It would be like writing something against Trump or Biden in old Elizabethan English, like William Shakespeare. Methinks he doth protest too much. And several pundits on CNN will go, what? Right? On Fox News will go, huh? I don't get it. That's the point. This is written for specific people in a specific time under a specific circumstance. Into verse 6, when I saw her, I marveled greatly. But the angel said to me, why do marvel? By the way, that's the angel looking at John and saying, close your mouth. All right. That's it. And saying, it's like, listen, don't look at her like that. That's not why she's here. Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman. By the way, he's not marveling at her sexually. He's just dumbfounded by what he's seeing. When Stephanie and I were in New Orleans, we went to this little restaurant where a jazz band was playing because we wanted to listen to the music. And when we were done, we walked out on the street. And when we walked out on the street, I'm not kidding, like 200 or 300 people marching down in a line, going down the street on the opposite side of the street, all of them, men and women, wearing frilly red lingerie, bright red lingerie, women's lingerie. It didn't leave anything to the imagination. And I just stood out there, I'm looking at it going, huh? And they're partying and hooping and hollering out in public, going, woo! And so when we got back to the hotel, we asked the guy behind the counter about that. What was that about? And he goes, I forget, it's like, that's the that's like the red coat or something dance. They are march. They do it every year. And I asked a very stupid question. I asked, why? And he gave me a little smile. And you know what he said? He said, it's cute that you think they need a reason. They wanted to. They wanted to. That's the kind of marveling that John did. I walked out of that restaurant, I saw that, and I went, whoa. Now listen, y'all, I'm from California. I have seen sin on public display before. But even that got me. I was like, well, okay, that's crazy. That's what John is saying. He's looking and going, what? What is this? He says, don't marvel at her. I will tell you the mystery of this woman and of the beast and the 7 heads and the 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And the dwellers on the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world will marvel to see the beast because it was and is not and is to come. Now, this is a reference. This was and is not and is to come. It's kind of like a blasphemous play on the phrasing of God being he who was and is to come. It's specifically supposed to be kind of an inversion of that, referring to I believe to the line of Caesars, most of which demanded to be worshipped as gods. And you were slain for saying otherwise. This is referring to the Caesar that was, the Caesar that is, and the Caesar that is yet to come. You say, well, Jarrod, it's not is, it's not. Yeah, but that's the point. He's currently reigning. He's currently propping himself up as God. But guess what? It's just a show. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's Wizard of Oz type stuff. Don't look behind the curtain, right? Because you'll see all the gears and the pulleys and the levers and all that. So, this is a reference to the Caesars. So, she is sitting on the back being carried by this militaristic political power that is Rome. And the angel says, where is it going? It's going to hell. It's on the fast track to hell. And it's not just going to carry the woman with it. It's going to carry all of those who were so marveled and impressed by the beast that they gave their lives over to it. This is a direct reference to the beasts we saw earlier in the book, the one that rises from the sea and the one that rises from the earth. She is on the back of this beast, being carried forward by its might and power. Verse 9, this calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 what? I have mountains. Does anybody have a word other than mountains? Hills. Does anybody else have hills? Okay. This calls for a mind with wisdom. That's, by the way, that's John saying, this is in code. Here's your puzzle for the week. Try to figure this out. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. What was one of the ancient names for Rome? The city on the 7 hills, because Rome has 7 hills. That's a little on the nose. Now, throughout the generations of church history and biblical interpretation, those, for example, my premillennial friends will look at who don't think this is Rome, who think that this is a power that has yet to appear. They will say, well, they'll either ignore this statement of the 7 mountains or they'll try to come up with another explanation for it. But it's too obvious, you know. Here's the thing: if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably not, I don't know, a horse, right? It's probably a duck. And the truth is, here's another way I heard somebody say it once: when you hear hooves, you think horses, not zebras. You know, what it seems to obviously be. And then it goes on, giving us even more information. Verse 10, they are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen, One is, the other has not yet come, and when he does, he must remain only a little while. Again, I think a direct reference to the succession of Caesars, because Rome has not always been an empire. Before Julius Caesar, it was a republic. And there haven't been an excessive handfuls of Caesars since Julius Caesar. So he numbers them. Verse 11, as for the beast that was and is not, it is an eighth, but it belongs to the seventh, and it goes to destruction. I'll be honest with you, I don't fully understand that one. I got a pretty good idea, but anytime we start, were you ever, how about you? Were you good at word problems in math class? No, I wasn't either. I saw recently a little internet meme of so there's this one like trend where teachers take pictures of funny answers written by elementary and like junior high school students on test answers that they give, and one of them was, I saw, Susan has 24 candy bars. Susan eats 12 candy bars. How many candy bars does Susan have? And the kid wrote, diabetes. Susan has diabetes. It's kind of like that, where it's like, what exactly are you trying to get across? There's a simpler way to do this. But but don't worry here, because John is being intentionally vague. He's being intentionally vague. And it's okay. Did you know that it's okay to read a Bible verse and go, I don't know. I think it might be this. I could be wrong, though. You will find entire libraries of different authors that try to give different answers to this particular question. But I like this answer. It's a reference to Caesars. To which one specifically? Dealer's choice. Now, I think, of course, that he is referring to Domitian, because that comes from not my interpretation of the verse. That comes from my dating of the book. Some have suggested Nero. Some have suggested a whole different list of things that don't even include Rome or the Caesars, but I think it's the best fit. Verse 12, and the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings that have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings, one for 1 hour together with the beast. These are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them. For he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings, and those who are with him are called chosen and faithful. Here's the one that I really, really think just kind of sinks this. John is writing in a time in Roman history where Christianity is considered to be an abomination and an enemy of the Roman state. That is why they are killing them wholesale. Is that the attitude that Rome is going to have towards Christianity forever, historically? No, because then you get this ruler by the name of Constantine. Constantine, a 3rd century Roman emperor, a lot has been written about Constantine, but basically I'm just going to give you the bare bones here. Constantine's mother converts to Christianity. It's really hard to execute your mom. So instead of executing his mother, he does something that no other Roman emperor would have thought of before him. He decides to make Christianity the state religion of the Roman Empire. This is what will result in the creation of the Roman Catholic Church. Eventually. It takes a couple of centuries to get there, but that's kind of the start for it. That the ball begins rolling downhill. Some of you, I'm not wearing it tonight, but some of you have seen my ring that I wear. Typically, it has a Chi-Rho on it. It's the letter P, and then it has an X through the stalk at the bottom. Several of you have asked me why I wear that symbol. Some of you think it looks Catholic. That's okay. but it's actually one of the earliest Christian symbols. It is, in Greek, a combination of the letters chi and rho. In English, it's actually 3 letters, CHR. And in Greek, these are the first 2 letters for the word Christos, or Christ. And it's used to signify Jesus. Now, the reason why I wear it is because even though it predates this decision, when Constantine makes Christianity the state religion of Rome, he begins to adorn legionnaire Roman soldiers' shields and his own personal guard with that symbol, the chi rho. And I like that thought. The same shields that used to stand in defense against Christianity, now bearing a Christian symbol. What does that say? Rome lost. Rome lost. They tried to stamp Christianity out. They tried to kick Jesus' gospel in the head, and Jesus won anyway. I love that. This is John at the end of the 1st century talking about something that's going to happen in roughly about 200 years. Pretty neat, huh? Verse 15. And the angel said to me, the waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages, and the 10 horns you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind and handing over their royal power to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth. Now, this is a reference to the actual fall of Rome, when Rome stops being a thing, which, by the way, is the beginning of the period of human history we typically refer to as the Dark Ages. After Rome falls, it takes pretty much all of its infrastructure with it, and Europe and Asia Minor and Africa and Palestine and all the places where Rome's influence had spread. Basically, everything falls apart, and you've got like what basically equates to a Mad Max movie after it falls apart, post-apocalyptic. Who defeated Rome? Finally, who put the last nail in Rome's coffin? Who finally took down the greatest world power that had ever been known to date? God, yeah, obviously, Lou. I'm talking about in history. Like if you read it in a history book, who did it? Say again? Well, we have. If you're looking for the armies that sacked Rome, the Goths and the Visigoths, but that's not who did it. Who did it? Rome did. Because empires aren't defeated; they collapse. They collapse. They become so decadent and so filled with debauchery, where people are more concerned with the status than they are with defense. The Visigoths should not have been able to beat the Roman military, but they just walked into Rome and took it. Why? Because there was no military really there to stop them, because they let it all fall apart. It reached critical mass, and then it crumbled. What did God just say would happen? The beast and the peoples and all these kings, they're going to what? Turn against Rome and kill it. And then finally, verse 18, and we'll open up for some questions and comments. And the woman you saw is the great city that has dominions over the kings of the earth. Again, this is a clear reference to Rome. Rome was the ruler of the known world. One author I read said it can't be Rome because of this verse, because they didn't rule every acre of the earth. This is hyperbole. Alexander the Great was said to have ruled the world. Did that mean that he had any outposts here in the continental U.S., in North America? No, he didn't. But he ruled the world as far as they knew it. As far as they knew it, he ruled it. In fact, the old saying is, then poetically, that Alexander stands on the hill. He looks out over his kingdom and weeps because there are no more worlds left to conquer. Well, Rome did the same thing. Rome did the same thing. They completely conquered the world as far as they knew. They thought everywhere was Rome. They didn't know there was such a place as not Rome. And that makes sense from John's perspective, and certainly from the perspective of his readers. So this statement is, here's this woman, she rules the world, she seems unbeatable, but she's more than beatable because God defeats her. You know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of David and Goliath. Do you guys remember? Remember the whole setup? You've got the Valley of Elah in the middle. You've got the Israelite army on one side and the Philistine army on the other. And every day, Goliath does what? He comes out to the battle line and he mocks God. Does anybody remember how long he did that? 40 days. 40 days. He was throwing shade at God, talking about God like he was a professional wrestler shooting a promo. For 40 days. And that's how long God let him do that until David showed up. Why let him go on that long? Why let Goliath build himself up and mock God for 40 days? Why not a week? How about 3 days? What about 1 day, 24 hours? How about he says it once and then David shows up? Why 40 days? What do you think? Say again? I can't hear you. Yeah, symbolic, yeah, because the Bible likes the number 40. Maybe. What do you think? Not for the Holy Spirit. Yeah, maybe if God decided to allow it to travel by natural means, okay. Yeah, what example? There's more glory in it for God when you take someone out at the height of their powers instead when they're at their lowest. He let that guy talk smack for 40 days so that everybody in Israel was afraid of him, and then David showed up, except for one little 14-year-old shepherd boy with red hair and freckles. So that way, when Goliath falls, who gets the credit? There's no question. Nobody in that army thought David did it. Nobody in that army thought David did it. Did you know that in 1980, at the U.S. Olympic Games in Lake Placid, Utah, the United States Olympic hockey team, which was made up primarily of college-level hockey players, went up against what I can only describe to you as statistically the greatest hockey team of all time. The Soviet team. You know how long they remained undefeated at the Olympics? In hockey, it wasn't even close. You know how long? 60 years. Until one team decided to come along and change it. That's why the announcer says at the end of the game, when the final buzzer is blown, do you believe in miracles? Because there was just this kind of feeling underneath it that I don't think college students did that by themselves. I think maybe, does it surprise anyone else to consider this too? The Soviet Union was an atheist state. Do you know that? Kind of a punch to the throat for the announcer to say, do you believe in miracles, right? Now, I'm not suggesting that God won that game. I think really good training in suicides won that game. But it's the same concept, right? You take somebody out when they're strongest, and people start to ask questions. Lou got it right the first time. Who took down Rome? God did. Lou, real quick. Say again? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he's allowed to comment on them because he invented them. Yeah. Yeah. And it's the number. Yeah. All right, y'all. Thanks. We'll see you next week.